My name is Jaden, and the topic I want to raise is about like evolution versus creation.
Yep.
So it's not as political, but it certainly has political implications. And for reference, I was raised Catholic, and it never really resonated with me. It always felt a little overbearing, and I could never find like truth in a Catholic or a Christian worldview. And I started just like reading books and listening to podcasts that talk a lot about evolution and natural selection and those principles. And I find that's a much better lens to look at the world. Like, for instance, you talk about like a meritocracy. All that is natural selection. Like the cream rises to the top.
Sure.
I mean, it's apparent in so many fields. Like, look around at all these beautiful buildings. That comes from architecture. Like, the good ideas stick, the bad ideas fall out of the gene pool. And I want to know why, like, your thoughts on natural selection and why it doesn't apply to humans.
Yeah, this is not a topic I know the best, but I have strong opinions on. So you have to understand I'm not as literate as I should be. But I'm a strict creationist, but that's fine. But there's spectrums on creationism and evolution. So do you acknowledge that maybe God created the evolution as a shepherded evolution throughout time? Because that's a nuanced opinion.
I acknowledge that there's a distinct beginning to the universe.
Okay,
Like Albert Einstein, for instance, against his original view, believed
for sure.
that
So if there's a beginning, is there a beginner?
That's the question. And who is that beginner?
No, but
why is it
but
Christ?
it has to be, right? Because
yes.
the laws of logic. Okay, great. So then there is that beginner is God or the idea of God, right? And so then we as creationists believe the universe has a beginning, end point, right? A beginning point and an end point.
Yep.
We believe it's God. I could walk you through why I believe that in the shortest period of time. But as far as creation, hinges on far more faith than creation. To believe that the way that we are currently composed and having species change is an act of faith. Now, Darwin was more of an adaptionist than an evolutionist in the sense that he proved adaptation, but he did not prove evolution. He theorized evolution. He could be right. Oh, I don't think he is. But he through his finches, he wrote that, yes, animals or birds will adjust to the environment of which they are in. We do not have any evidence, nor can you. You can guess in the fossil record of actual species change. Does that make sense?
Yep. There's a lot of like psychological things too in humans. Like, one example I'll bring up is, I mean, would you say as a general rule of thumb, like women are the sexual gatekeepers and men are the sexual pursuers?
Yeah.
That distinction can be explained by evolution, right? A female's eggs in her body is a finite resource, whereas a man's sperm is basically infinite, meaning the woman has to protect. There's more of a cost when she has to raise a baby.
But maybe God made it that way, right?
Maybe. A lot of things like that point towards evolution of some sort.
For sure, but I think I think you're close because you're marveling in the design.
Yep.
And then therefore we believe it was designed.
I think evolution can give off the impression of design because it is so intricate. Even like something like religion, I would explain in terms of evolution and natural selection. Like, over time, religions change. For instance, there's plenty of denominations of Christianity. Like, religion is not a
I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think you would agree with our perspective that even looking at this objectively with reason, there's something improbable of our existence.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
And that improbability could be a roll of the dice of chromosomal gene mutations over trillions of years, or it actually could be something a lot simpler, which is there's something above us that just designed us. And so I actually think the designing argument is far more rational because you look at how we're built, you look at the trillions of chromosomes within us, how our body works, the DNA sequencing. It's hard to believe all that is an act of the dice. And that is what evolution contests, is that it's a lot of, it would be like rolling snake eyes 23 billion times in a row. That's how improbable evolution is.
My contention with that would be like, evolution is like, it's unchanging. It doesn't put us at the center of everything. So a lot of people explain it's like the good of the species, but truly it's just the good of the gene, passing on the genes that stick. It can be subconscious.
Of course, I don't disagree with any of that. We just think all of that was designed into us, right?
And so is your belief that God made the universe and then
I believe
implemented?
So I believe what the scriptures say, which is that God created the earth and then God created man. and that we are here. The period of time I don't get into. Strong opinions is 6,000 years, 6 million years. I don't really care that much. I think it's more important morally that God predated the universe. The universe was made at his direction, then nature was made, then animals were made, then man was made, in that sequencing. And I think that's an important sequencing.
Yeah, and I agree that there should be, if we believe that there's a start of the universe, there has to be a beginner.
For sure.
And I also like disagree with like ethical subjectivism, where that's like you're entitled to your own moral. But I feel like there is one truth. There has to be.
There has to be, right?
And your argument is God provides us that truth through the Bible. But then why is your truth the truth?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So,
Why-
because through both reason and revelation, though. So, God gives us both. Revelation, of course, is the scriptures. Reason is our ability to interact with the natural world to see if the scriptures are actually true. So, why is Christianity true? Well, first, let's just test the 10 Commandments. If you follow the 10 Commandments, your life will be objectively better and your society will be objectively better, right? I mean, not killing, not murdering, not stealing, honoring your parents, not having anything above the idea of a sovereign God, right? Resting for 1 day a week, not lying. These are things that we can all agree, like, okay, that's a good way to build society. But let me just one thing. The two miracles that Christianity hinges upon is creation, which I think you're almost there-ish, that there was a beginning to everything. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then the resurrection. And the resurrection is the greatest, most documented miracle in human history. And we believe, of course, it to be true. It defies every other historical explanation so in order for an atheist to be able to wrestle with the resurrection, you must answer, who is Jesus Christ? Okay, what happened to his body? Why did all of his followers die a death voluntarily afterwards? Why were all the original witnesses women, which in the old world you never would have had women witnesses, right? A lot of misogyny back then. Why did we have all these people that from the first threshold, the second threshold, eyewitnesses say that Jesus Christ rose from the dead? So all of this, canon, and I don't expect you to believe it, is hinging on that one event. So it's not about Jonah the whale, it's not about parting the Red Sea, it's creation, resurrection, that's it. Yeah, and if those two things are true, everything else in the Bible can be true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I agree that for an atheist to try to disprove theism, or at least Christianity, it would be almost impossible to say, why would people die to say, Jesus died on the cross for me and I saw it. Why would I admit, I'm from your perspective, why would I admit, yeah, I saw him die and rise from the dead?
Well, no, yeah, for example, and so again, the answer people would give is like the Jonestown cult, that people can do really crazy stuff if they're convinced by a certain leader. I'm not convinced by that argument. But for example, like James, the half-brother of Jesus, Paul, who had no reason whatsoever, formerly Saul, persecuted Jews, led a great life, converted to Christianity, died a terrible death in prison, from the upside-down resurrection of Thomas. Like, these people had no reason to die the way they did, yet they saw something that compelled them to all of a sudden put everything on the line, which was the belief that Jesus rose from the dead. Now, this is what's crazy. The Romans gave them an opportunity, saying, you can believe in Jesus, you just can't say he rose from the dead. They said, no, I refuse to give an inch on that. And so there's something there so powerful that it inspired an early church across an entire region and a religion that swept the world. And so that's enough for me to believe that it's true.
Yeah.
Not to mention, we have if you count Acts, 5 different eyewitness accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then Acts, of different perspectives of this one singular event. And then we have Josephus, and then we have the second and third rate historians that say that something happened in this region at that time. And then also, I don't expect you to be persuaded by this, but accepting Jesus into my life changed everything for me. It changes your perspective, changes your worldview, changes who you are from within, and it gives you purpose that nothing else can explain. So
I appreciate hearing your input
Thank
on
you.
it. Thanks
Thank
for
you so
your time,
much.
Sean.
Yeah.